Hi, how are you? My name is Dan Frier, and I am one of the principal partners at the law firm of Frier Levitt. We're based in New York and New Jersey, and we have clients all over the country. We specialize in healthcare law, both representing providers such as physicians, medical practices, surgery centers, and other types of healthcare providers, including hospitals, as well as pharmacies and drug manufacturers, and many different players along the whole drug supply chain. I'm here today virtually with a colleague and friend of mine, Brian Decker, who is the president and CEO of a company called Electronic Medical Office Logistics, also known as EMOL Health. I'm going to let Brian tell you about what EMOL does. This happens to be an interview about data and the importance of data, but Brian will certainly do a better job than I will explaining what he does and what his company does. So Brian, maybe you can give us a brief summary.
Absolutely. My name is Brian Decker, and as Dan mentioned, my company is called EMOL Health. We are a data aggregation company. We collect data from oncology and non-oncology practices into a centralized warehouse that we can then analyze and run reports on. We pull in both their structured EMR, their unstructured, we pull in their billing, their claims, their patient management, pretty much anything electronic in their office, we pull in to our warehouse so that analysis can occur on it on the back end.
You mentioned unstructured and structured data. Can you explain a little bit of what that is, what both of those are?
Absolutely. In any EMR, in any electronic system, we have structured elements. These are the fixed fields that are typed in. These are the elements of, if you take someone's temperature, these are the number that comes out. And the unstructured data, which is that stack of paperwork that gets scanned and faxed and sent into the office. It's their pathology reports and radiology reports. It's the doctor's dictations. All of that comes in also. And you need both of it. You need all of that to get a complete picture of the patient.
And what do you do with that data when you put it into a warehouse?
Once all the data has been brought together into one centralized spot, we're able then to run some analysis on it. We first have to collect it. We have to normalize it to a certain extent. But for the most part, we can start running reports. We can put on it, we can run reports like value-based care to look for those types of things, quality initiatives, benchmarking. We can look at revenue cycles within different practices, compare them to others, and see how their patients are being treated versus patients at other locations.
Just so we understand, when you say you have to normalize the data to some extent, what does that mean?
The data comes in a very raw format. We end up getting the data brought in however the physicians end up typing it in. Not everyone says the same words, not everyone spells things the same way, not everyone enters things in their systems the same way. Due to that, we need to put a lot of algorithms in place that take things from what is entered by the physician into a usable format.
Now, once the data is in the warehouse, why is that data important to medical practices? How can it be used and by whom?
Absolutely. Within the practices, it has, again, immense value through their ability to, again, do quality initiatives, for them to benchmark, for them to see how their treatment patterns have changed over time, and to compare patients within their system. Additionally, though, it has value outside of their practice when you bring in other data to be able to do more of the same thing. And then outside of that, to groups like pharmaceutical companies and manufacturers and insurers and payers and even Wall Street, all of which are interested in aspects of this data for their own purposes, but also to help improve patient care.
So you mentioned pharma. In what way is pharma interested in this type of data?
Pharma's interested in a couple aspects. They're interested in as they're trying to do clinical trials and see how patients are being treated in the real world, who's receiving their medications, and what treatment patterns are, again, optimal with their drugs in those plans. So they get very interested in all those. They're also very interested in making sure the right patient's getting the right drug at the right time. Make sure that if an individual showed up and it is a rare disease, that that patient's being treated optimally, because no individual, no physician can be an expert in every single specialty, in every single area. And so we try to help put systems in place, and pharma is very interested in these that help make sure, again, that rare individual, that rare diagnosis can get the best treatment possible in even a rural area.
So managed care companies have data, but they tend to have claims data primarily. What you're talking about is much more than just claims data, correct?
Absolutely. Claims data has huge value. It allows us to see trends over time, but it lacks the nuance, it lacks some of the reasoning of why the treatment was done. We know from the claims data that the individual received this medication, but we don't necessarily know why or what the indicators were that led to that decision. So the best we can do is look at what has happened. With the clinical data, we can look at what has happened, but we can also start to predict where things are going and help make recommendations along the way.
Sure. Now, I know that a lot of what you've been doing over the last few years has been focused on the oncology industry because oncology is so data-driven with respect to the treatment of various cancers. But can a data warehouse, can the aggregation of data be valuable to other types of physicians as well?
Absolutely. I believe all medical groups should have access to their data, and they should do some level of analysis on it. I think it has tremendous value for everyone. We started off in oncology. My father was a medical oncologist. I grew up in this environment, and it was an area I knew a lot about, and they needed help when we got into this. I believe other groups, as more scrutiny is being brought upon them, need to do some of these same things.
Got it. And one of the things that I've seen as a healthcare attorney over the last few years is an evolution from fee-for-service type payment structures in healthcare, where physicians are paid based upon the volume of care that they provide, shifting over to a more value-based approach, where physicians are paid based upon the quality of the care that they provide, as well as the efficiency, the choices that they make. If I would think, and maybe you can speak to this a bit, that having access to detailed data about how your physicians are practicing, the decisions they're making, could be utilized to improve value-based contracting for the practices.
Absolutely. Value-based contracting is big, something a lot of groups are doing. The government is pushing through programs, especially in oncology, like the Oncology Care Module, which is going into another year right now. And other specialties are having pushbacks that are similar in those areas. The only way to optimize your treatment and your care for the patients is to know what's happened in the past, to be able to look at the trends that are occurring within your practice, both with the cost of the treatments being done and the effectiveness, to then make the right decisions for the future.
Now, switching topics a little bit, I know that a lot of physicians, whenever you talk about data aggregation, the questions about HIPAA and privacy and confidentiality arise. Obviously, your company EMOL is in possession of a lot of data. How do you protect that data, and what do you advise practices to do to protect data that's in a large data warehouse?
I think we make a lot of initiatives to protect the data. I do think it is something that is not done enough in oncology and in medicine as a whole. We've neglected as a society and as IT people within the medical community to protect that data in the past. Big companies such as ourselves, or not big, but small companies such as ourselves that are focused on this are able to protect that data. We're able to bring it in. We're able to be CFR 21 Part 11 compliant. We're able to get the SOC certifications to protect that and keep an eye on it. And we can have people dedicated to that. The hard part is with smaller organizations, with individual practices, that can be a cost. And it's a threat, and it's something they definitely need to stay on top of, as we do.
Sure. Now, in terms of commercializing data, and what I mean by that is, literally selling data. Um, have you noticed and have you been involved in transactions whereby practices are actually able to monetize some of their data with, for example, the pharmaceutical industry? And if so, how is that generally done?
Absolutely. So when it comes to the licensing of medical data, certain elements cannot be sold, they can't be licensed, but we can de-identify the data. We can license that data in a de-identified fashion. We can also license reports created from that data. The larger the data set, the more opportunities exist for that, both with pharmaceutical companies, with manufacturers, with insurers, and so on. The limitations therein are that there is a value there. We can reimburse the practices at a fair market value for access to their data. But over time, those opportunities have waxed and waned as the industry has grown, and to some aspects of the data are slowly becoming a commodity, as claims data has already.
Sure. So where do you see the healthcare data industry going in the next 5 years or so? I know that's a hard question because we don't know for sure, but if anyone has some insight, I think it would probably be you.
I think over the next 5 years, we're going to see the health data industry, data become more readily available. As I mentioned, I think data is going to move a little more into a commodity. It'll be easier for people to get access to. I think it'll ultimately be easier for patients to get access to it, and they will be able to opt in and help share their data. This will reduce the number of tests that need to be ordered because they'll be able to share the information they've already collected and they know. It'll also create more data points. So with these huge data sets, we're going to be able to then look at more and more nuanced elements over time that will help improve treatment.
So if there are representatives of medical practices out there, whether they're independent medical practices or hospital-based or private equity-based, how would they utilize a company like yours to get started with the process of creating a data warehouse and ultimately utilizing their data internally and or commercializing their data?
I think all of these groups, they have a right to have access to their data. And if they do not have access to it now, they should figure out what needs to be done so they can get access to it. And if they have the internal staff, I think doing analysis on that data internally can be immensely valuable. With that said, I recognize that is not something that can be done by every organization. Not everyone has those capabilities or those cycles to do that. And at a certain point, you need others to align that data with yours to create more value and allow you to run more comprehensive reports. I think when groups are ready to take that next step, that is when they're welcome to reach out to me and our team, and we'd be happy to talk to them about the opportunities that are there for them and for their data.
Great. And one other question that, we talk about data curation, and there are separate companies that work with pharmaceutical companies that I guess if the pharma company is looking for a particular study, these companies will go and they will work with a practice or they work with a company like you to curate that data specifically for a specific reason. Can you talk a little bit about what curation involves and whether you're involved in that or how that works with respect to data warehouses?
Absolutely. So as I mentioned, when we collect all the data, when it all comes in, we have data that's in a structured format and data that's in an unstructured format. Again, the unstructured data, these fax documents, these physician dictations, sometimes require a person to read through them and do that and draw conclusions from that information or pull out relevant pieces of data. Curation is the process of doing that. We do have nurses that can sit down and read through those charts and pull out those relevant pieces of information. We attempt to do as much as possible electronically and automatically, but there's always a point where a person is needed still at this point to do that final review and say, this is what is going on with this individual.
Great. Well, Brian, I really appreciate the time. This is a very important topic. We're going to run after this your contact information. So if anyone has any additional questions, they can reach you or me. And thank you. I appreciate it.